Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be looking at how to rotoscope and also different ways to rotoscope. This includes the normal masking in After Effects, using the Roto Brush Tool in After Effects. So if we're all set, let's get to doing it. Rotoscoping is used within the VFX industry to cut out an object within a footage so it could be placed in front of another background. And in today's video, I will be showing you how to do this. First of all, we're gonna need some footage. I found some footage online. You want to make sure that the footage you're sourcing to be rotoscope is good quality. Preferably, if you can, get 4K footage. If not, 1080p will do. And you want to make sure there's at least some kind of color difference between the object that you're cutting out and the background that they're already in, to make it a little bit easier to spot where you should be placing your markers. Here's a footage that I found online. So here's my footage of a man walking through a field. So for this, we're just going to rotoscope man outside of this and replace the background. So the first way we're going to do this is by using the normal mask within After Effects. So to do masking, the first way we're going to do this is by using the pen tool within After Effects. And to get the pen tool, you can either click on up here to get the pen tool, or simply use the keyboard shortcut, which is G. And then once your cursor has changed to a pen, now you can start masking. And you want to also make sure you zoom in whenever you're masking so that you can distinguish the background from the object that you're separating. When you're doing rotoscoping, you can do it breaking up the different parts of the body to make it a little bit easier, more to control. Let's start with the arm here. So to do this, we're first going to click here. Let's just mask out the arm. And once you've done that, the background will go black, and that's fine. To get the entire image back, we're first of all going to come here, click on the little arrow, and then we're going to go to the area that says masking. And in the masking section, where you see add, we're simply going to say none. And by switching that to none, we'll bring back the image so that we can have a clearer definition between the background and the subject we're separating. As you can see, we've gotten straight lines from our masking. So now we're simply going to make sure that the entire arm is put within the box that we've drawn. So to do this, we're simply going to click here. To make sure that our edges are cut out correctly, we're going to go back to the pen tool and we're going to select Convert Vertex Tool. And this will simply put two handles on our points, like so. And then with these points, we can simply move them to adjust them to fit onto the footage. And by dragging it out, you're making the shape bigger. By dragging it back in, you're making it smaller. And by dragging the point more inwards to where the corner is, you're making the line sharper. And it's the same in reverse. That looks nice. And we're simply going to do this for the entire body. If you were wondering how I'm moving the image, you're simply holding space and left clicking at the same time to move the image. And if you feel like certain areas may need a point, then suddenly add one. And sometimes you are required to get like these tiny details. To do this, you're simply going to press Control, and then once your cursor changes, then you can simply break it off and then make sure you're adjusting it to the correct space. And you want to make sure that they overlap. If you don't overlap the two shapes together, then you're just going to get a big gap. So you want to make sure that you overlap each shape. And if you wanted to move the entire shape, you have to make sure that you're on the selection tool by pressing V, selecting all of it, or you can simply click to get all of the corners. And then once you've got all of the corners, you can simply move your shape to any position you like. After you've done masking out your subject and making sure everything looks clean and nice, and you want to make sure before you start moving your footage and continuing with the roto, you want to make sure that there's a little stopwatch that's turned on in After Effects to enable auto keyframe. What this will do, every time we move a shape, it will register that it moved and set a new keyframe at that specific frame. So to do this, you want to come over to the three lines and you want to right click and then go to enable keyframe, auto keyframe. Once that's done, you'll see a little red stopwatch icon. We're simply going to make sure that on our first frame that the keys are set. So we're going to select the mask path. After you've selected all of the mask path of all of the shapes that you have, we're simply going to hit the stopwatch icon, and this will just make sure that all of shapes have a keyframe at the start. So now if we were to go to the next frame, now that we're on the next frame, if you click on one of the masks, every single mask will appear, and you want to select the first mask by double clicking it, and then once you have it selected, you want to simply drag it over the subject, and you want to make sure that you scale it to make sure it fits, and you want to hold down shift to scale down the shape, and shift will just scale it in one direction. You can also use control and left click to change the size and the shape of the mask, but by doing this you could change a big thing, so that's why it's preferable to use shift. So like this, you still retain the shape, you're just scaling it down. And as you can see it's scaled down, but now we just got to move it back into place. After you've moved the shape to be in the position you want it to be, you can simply press enter on your keyboard to make sure it stays there. And as you'll see, there has been a new keyframe added thanks to the auto keyframe. Now with the shape still selected, you want to make sure you move the points into the correct shape. If you select multiple points, then it can help make sure that the shape stays the exact same. Now you can click on the point and then drag it over to where it needs to be. Make sure you zoom in for this part, otherwise you might not be putting it in the correct place. And as you can see, now I'm just dragging the points to where they need to be, and make sure that you fix any arches that are there. And now it's back into the same position, but just 10 frames ahead. So now if you were to go back, you can see the shape is moving. That's fine. If there's like little gaps, we can come back later and fix that. But for now, we're just making it rough outline. Now we're gonna move on to the rest of the body. we can watch through it and see what's going on. And as you can see, as the subject is moving, the mask is moving as well. Since we did every 10 frames, as you can see, if we scrub in between, you can see that the mask is not sticking with the subject. So for this instance, you would need to go in between the frames and adjust the mask. And when you adjust the mask, you want to make sure you check it between the two frames at the start and at the end. Now that we've finished with masking, let's move on to the next method of rotoscoping. So for this one, I'm going to still use the same footage. Now let's do the roto brush. For this tool, it will be found up here. Once you've clicked on it, nothing will have happened so far. To use the roto brush in After Effects, you want to first of all double click onto your footage. You'll see a green circle appear. Now to make this bigger, I'm going to simply just hold down Control and left click and drag, and by doing this it changes the size of the brush. What you want to do is paint the subject, and once you're painting, you'll see a green paint appear onto your subject. You're simply telling the tool what you would like to cut out. Now as you can see, it's selected some other things as well that we would not like to have. So to get rid of that, we're simply going to hold down Alt until you get a red circle, and that's to remove. So you're simply going to paint it out, and red just means remove. And as you can see, it starts to shrink down the outline. And as you can see now that we've finished outlining, this is where I was saying at the beginning, it's very key that you get a high quality footage. Otherwise, you'll just get jagged edges all around, and it will just make it a little bit easier to identify where there should be a cutout. And it just helps you tell the difference between the background and the foreground. So now that we have selected our subject that we want to cut out, if you come here to this side, you'll see the effects control for all of the Roto Brush tool. Now Roto Brush has 3 different versions. You've got version 1.0, 2.0 and 3.0. 3.0 is the latest version, so you want to select that, but by default it will come onto that, and you can try out the others to see how they compare to all 3. Now you got controls for feathering, contrast, shift edge, reduce chatter. So if we look here at feathering, if we were to increase this a bit, it just helps out smooth the lines and gives us a little bit cleaner cut around our subject. But for this purpose, I'm just going to leave it on a little bit of feather, and this should be fine. Now in order for this to work, you simply want to press spacebar, and what that will do, it will track the footage forwards and cut out and follow the subject at the same time. And as you can see, if you scrub through, you can tell that it has done a good job. It's sticking to the subject very well. Now, you can also, from this point, do a refine brush tool, which is located in the same place. And what this will do, your cursor will become purple, and it just, as the name suggests, it just literally helps you define the edges a little bit better. As you can see for the head, there's like little bits missing, so we're going to simply use this tool. It does this by having a black layer for the background and then a white layer for your subject. So like this, it can identify the difference between the 2 pixels. And if you're happy with this, we'll just lock that in as well. As you can see, that has followed it really nicely. So now all we need to do is simply come here and click on freeze, and what this will do, it will lock in everything that the rotoscope has done. And once it's frozen, you can tell everything is frozen because everything would have changed to purple. And if you needed to go back and fix some of the rotoscope, it's simple as just clicking on the freeze button, and from that point on, you can go and make your selection that you want to keep or not keep, and then you just have to hit freeze again. But as you can see, it has done a pretty good job. Now, obviously on this you can't really tell, but if we were to go back to our main composition, here it shows you clearly what it has done. And by comparing the two, you can tell with a manual, you're going to have to do most of it manually. And by comparing masking from Roto Brush, with masking, you have to be a lot more careful of all of the subject, because you need to make sure that you keep what you want and not add any background elements. With the Roto Brush, you can select a subject and then it will automatically just stick to the area that you painted. And with the Roto Brush, it's a little bit faster if you can get the masking to be a lot cleaner. I've still got a few jagged spots, so I would have needed to go back and fix them. But on the other hand, with the manual, you want to make sure you stick as close as possible to the subject. So even if you're a little bit over where the subject meets the background, that is still fine. I would suggest try and keep as much information of the subject as you can, because then when you're adding, let's say, this character onto a background, then you can clearly tell there has not been anything happening. You want to look at this with so much detail when you're doing this. And if you see something that's not right, just simply undo or remove the effect and then redo it again.